All right, so welcome to our deep dive today, Samantha.
Always exciting to be here.
Our listeners have sent in a really fascinating collection of articles, and they're all focused on Donald Trump's speech, Samantha,
Oh, yeah.
at America Fest
Yeah.
on December 22nd, 2024. And we're going to be unpacking his declared intention to restrict transgender rights.
Right.
It's a particularly controversial element of his speech that's already creating a lot of buzz.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about it.
Now, Samantha, before we get started, let me just remind our listeners that here at the Deep Dive, we're all about exploring complex issues from multiple angles.
Mm-hmm.
We present the information, dive deep into the sources, and let you form your own conclusions.
Right. We just provide the information.
Now, that being said, we do want to be upfront about something.
Okay.
Samantha and I were both firm believers that there are only two genders.
Absolutely.
But in the interest of providing a comprehensive overview, we're going to explore all sides of this issue.
Yeah.
Now, Samantha, I know you've got a keen eye for political rhetoric
I try to.
and predicting policy outcomes. What are some of the most striking elements you noticed in these articles about Trump's speech?
Well, what immediately jumped out at me was the sheer combativeness of his language. He repeatedly used phrases like, with a stroke of my pen on day one,
Yeah,
signaling his intent to use executive orders to swiftly implement his agenda.
right.
This suggests he anticipates pushback from Congress and is prepared to bypass them to enact his policies.
He certainly didn't mince words, did he, Samantha?
Not at all.
And speaking of strong reactions, there's been quite a range of responses to this speech from both sides of the aisle. Conservative groups like Turning Point USA are praising his bold stance, while LGBTQ plus advocacy groups like the Human Rights Campaign are condemning it as discriminatory and harmful.
Right.
It's clear this issue is deeply polarizing.
It is, yeah. And it's fascinating to see how this aligns with Trump's broader attacks on woke culture and critical race theory.
Right.
By linking these issues together, he's framing this as a larger cultural battle, appealing to a specific segment of the population who feel threatened by social change and perceive these movements as attacks on their values.
He's a master at tapping into those anxieties, isn't he, Samantha?
It is.
Now let's get into the specifics of his policy pronouncements. Trump explicitly stated that the U.S. government will only recognize two genders, male and female.
Mm-hmm.
And to achieve this, he outlined a series of actions he intends to take on his first day back in office.
Right. From what he laid out in his speech and what's being reported in these articles, it seems his primary tool will be executive orders.
Right.
He specifically pledged to ban gender-affirming care for minors nationwide,
Wow.
falsely labeling it as child sexual mutilation, a term that's been widely condemned by medical professionals and LGBTQ plus advocates.
Banning health care for minors, that's a bold move, Samantha.
Yes, it is.
And what about the military?
Yeah.
I recall during his first term, he implemented a ban on transgender individuals serving. He's now signaling his intention to reinstate that ban.
Right.
And there's even talk of discharging existing transgender personnel.
You're absolutely correct. That's a significant development, considering the ongoing debates about military readiness and inclusion.
Wow.
This potential rollback of rights extends beyond healthcare in the military.
Okay.
He also mentioned prohibiting transgender women from competing in women's sports at all levels and removing transgender topics from school curriculums, potentially by restricting federal funding.
So, Samantha, he's essentially targeting education, healthcare, the military, and even sports. It seems like a comprehensive effort to restrict the rights of transgender individuals.
It's certainly a far-reaching agenda, and it raises important questions about the legal and societal implications of such policies. We're already seeing legal experts predicting a wave of lawsuits challenging these measures, citing existing legal precedents protecting transgender rights in education, healthcare, and the military.
It sounds like we're heading for a legal showdown, Samantha.
It does.
And with a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, the outcome of these battles could have significant long-term consequences for transgender rights in America.
That's a crucial point. The composition of the court will undoubtedly play a role in how these legal challenges unfold. And beyond the legal battles, we need to consider the potential impact on transgender individuals and their families.
Right.
We've seen immediate condemnation from LGBTQ plus advocacy groups who argue that these policies will create a climate of fear and discrimination,
Right.
potentially leading to increased mental health risks for transgender youth denied access to gender-affirming care, and a chilling effect on transgender individuals' willingness to serve in the military or participate in public life.
These are serious concerns, Samantha. and they highlight the human cost of these policy decisions. It's important for our listeners to understand the potential consequences for real people's lives as we delve deeper into this complex issue.
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember that policies have real-world impacts, and these potential impacts are something we need to examine closely.
Okay, Samantha, you've given us a lot to consider already. We've got Trump's aggressive rhetoric, his intention to use executive orders to enact sweeping changes, and a range of reactions from both supporters and opponents.
Yeah.
This is shaping up to be a pivotal moment in the debate over transgender rights in America.
Absolutely.
Let's dig into some of these specific policy proposals in more detail and explore the potential ramifications for transgender individuals, their families, and American society as a whole.
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in.
So, Samantha, we've laid out Trump's proposed policies. Now let's delve into their potential implications. You mentioned the possibility of legal challenges. What are some of the key legal arguments that might be used to fight these policies?
Well, Derek, legal experts are pointing to several existing legal precedents that could be used to challenge Trump's proposed actions.
Okay.
For instance, Title IX prohibits sex discrimination in education and has been interpreted to include gender identity. This could be used to challenge the removal of transgender topics from school curriculums or the ban on transgender women competing in women's sports.
And what about healthcare, Samantha? Could existing laws protect access to gender-affirming care for minors?
That's where things get a bit more complicated, Derek.
Okay.
The Affordable Care Act prohibits discrimination based on sex in healthcare settings, but there's ongoing debate about whether this extends to gender identity.
I see.
There's also the matter of parental rights,
Yeah.
which conservative groups often invoke to argue that parents should have the final say in their children's healthcare decisions.
So it's likely to be a messy legal battle with arguments centered around interpretations of existing laws, parental rights, and the scope of federal authority to regulate healthcare.
Precisely, Derek. And beyond the legal arena, we need to consider the potential societal impact of these policies. What are some of the broader concerns being raised by experts and advocates?
Well, one major concern, Samantha, is the potential impact on the mental health of transgender youth.
Right.
Studies have shown that access to gender-affirming care is associated with improved mental health outcomes for transgender youth. Denying them access to this care could lead to increased rates of depression, anxiety, and even suicide.
And it's not just about healthcare, Derek. There's also the issue of creating a more hostile and discriminatory environment for transgender individuals. Trump's rhetoric and policies could embolden those who already harbor prejudice against transgender people, leading to increased harassment and violence.
That's a chilling thought, Samantha.
It is.
And it underscores the importance of considering the broader social and cultural context when evaluating these policy proposals. We can't ignore the potential for real-world harm, even if those harms aren't explicitly codified in law.
Absolutely, Derek. It's about recognizing the potential for unintended consequences and understanding how policies can contribute to a climate of fear and intolerance.
Now, Samantha, you've mentioned Trump's broader attacks on woke culture and critical race theory. How do these attacks connect to his stance on transgender rights?
What's interesting, Derek, is how he's framing all of these issues as part of a single cultural battle. He's positioning himself as the defender of traditional values against what he sees as radical leftist ideologies that threaten the fabric of American society.
So he's creating a narrative of us versus them, with transgender rights becoming a symbolic battleground in this larger cultural war.
Exactly, Derek. And this strategy is particularly effective because it taps into existing anxieties about social change and cultural shifts.
Right.
He's appealing to a segment of the population who feel like their way of life is under attack and offering them a simple solution, a return to traditional values.
It's a divisive strategy, no doubt, but it's one that's proven to be politically potent in the past.
It has, Derek, and that's why it's so crucial to dissect this rhetoric and understand the underlying motivations and potential consequences. It's not just about transgender rights, it's about a broader struggle over the direction of American society.
Now, Samantha, let's shift our focus to the potential economic impact of these policies. There's been some discussion about how boycotts and protests could affect businesses and industries. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Derek, we've already seen companies face backlash for their stances on LGBTQ+ issues in the past, and it's likely that Trump's policies will lead to renewed calls for boycotts and protests, particularly targeting businesses that are seen as supportive of his agenda.
And this could have a significant impact on certain industries, particularly those that rely on a diverse customer base or workforce, such as entertainment, tourism, and tech.
Yes, Derek. And it also raises questions about the role of corporate social responsibility in today's political climate.
Yeah.
Are companies willing to risk alienating a portion of their customer base by taking a stand on these issues, or will they prioritize profits over principles?
It's a tough balancing act, Samantha.
It is.
And the decisions they make will have far-reaching consequences for both their bottom line and their reputation.
Absolutely.
Now, Samantha, let's talk about the potential global impact of Trump's policies. The United States often sets a precedent on human rights issues. Do you think his stance on transgender rights could embolden anti-LGBTQ plus movements in other countries?
That's a real concern, Derek. Trump's rhetoric and policies during his first term emboldened right-wing populist movements around the world,
Right.
and his renewed focus on transgender rights could have a similar ripple effect.
Especially in countries where LGBTQ plus rights are already under threat.
Yes, Derek, Trump's actions could provide ammunition for those seeking to roll back progress on LGBTQ plus rights in other parts of the world.
Right.
They could point to the United States as an example of a country moving away from inclusivity and tolerance.
So his policies could have a chilling effect on LGBTQ plus rights globally, setting a dangerous precedent and potentially making life more difficult for LGBTQ plus individuals in countries with fewer protections.
That's a sobering thought, Derek.
It is.
It highlights the interconnectedness of human rights issues and the need for international solidarity in the face of rising intolerance.
And it reminds us, Samantha, that the fight for equality is a global one, and that progress in one country can be undermined by setbacks in another.
Exactly.
Okay, Samantha, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've discussed the potential legal, societal, economic, and global implications of Trump's proposed policies. It's clear that this is a complex and multifaceted issue with no easy answers.
It certainly is, Derek. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's important to emphasize that these are just some of the potential implications.
Right.
We're still in the early stages of this debate, and the situation is likely to evolve rapidly in the coming weeks and months.
Right, Samantha. This is a dynamic situation, and we'll need to stay informed and engaged as it unfolds. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts on this issue, I'd like to take a moment to address something that's been on my mind.
Oh, okay. I'm all ears, Derek. What's been weighing on you?
Well, Samantha, throughout this deep dive, we've been striving to present a balanced and objective analysis of Trump's proposed policies and their potential consequences. But as I've been reading through these sources and listening to your insights, I can't help but feel a sense of unease.
I understand, Derek. It's a sensitive and emotionally charged issue, and it's natural to have personal reactions to it.
Exactly, Samantha. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that while we're committed to impartiality, we're not robots.
Right.
We're human beings with our own beliefs and values.
Of course.
And for me personally, this whole situation feels deeply troubling.
I hear you, Derek. It's easy to get caught up in the political and legal intricacies of this issue, but we can't lose sight of the human element.
All right, Samantha, at the end of the day, this is about real people's lives and their right to live with dignity and respect. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that while we're presenting all sides of the argument, we don't condone discrimination or prejudice in any form.
Well said, Derek. And I think that's an important point to make, especially given the divisive nature of this issue. It's easy to get swept up in rhetoric and lose sight of the human impact of these policies.
Now, Samantha, let's move on to our final thoughts on this issue. We've explored the potential implications of Trump's policies and discussed the broader context of this debate. But I'm curious to hear your expert perspective on what this all means for the future of transgender rights in America and beyond.
That's a big question, Derek, and I think the answer is complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, we're seeing a growing awareness and acceptance of transgender identities in many parts of the world. More and more countries are enacting laws to protect transgender rights, and public opinion is shifting in a more inclusive direction.
Right.
However, we're also witnessing a backlash against these advances, particularly from conservative and right-wing groups.
Right.
Trump's policies are a reflection of this backlash, and they represent a significant threat to the progress that's been made.
So it's a push and pull between progress and resistance, and the outcome of this struggle is far from certain.
Exactly.
I agree, Samantha. It's a delicate balance, and the actions of political leaders like Trump can have a significant impact on the trajectory of this movement. His aggressive stance on transgender rights could galvanize anti-LGBTQ plus forces, both domestically and internationally, We could see a wave of similar policies being proposed and enacted in other countries, leading to a rollback of rights and increased discrimination.
It's a possibility.
It's a sobering thought, Samantha. But on the other hand, could this backlash also spark a renewed wave of activism and advocacy for transgender rights? Could it galvanize support from those who might have been complacent before?
Absolutely, Derek. Throughout history, we've seen how attempts to suppress marginalized groups often backfire, leading to greater visibility and solidarity. The LGBTQ+ rights movement has a long history of resilience and resistance, and I have no doubt that they will rise to this challenge.
I'm curious, Samantha, what are some of the key factors that will shape the future of this movement? What should our listener, who's deeply invested in this issue, be paying attention to?
Well, I think one crucial factor, Derek, is the outcome of the legal battles that are sure to ensue. The courts will play a pivotal role in determining the constitutionality of Trump's policies, and their decisions will have far-reaching implications.
And beyond the courts, public opinion will also play a significant role.
Yeah.
If there's widespread public outcry against these policies, it could put pressure on lawmakers to reconsider their stance.
Right. Public pressure can be a powerful force for change.
You're right, Samantha. And speaking of public pressure, what role do you see social media and online activism playing in this movement?
Oh, that's huge. Social media has become an indispensable tool for organizing, raising awareness, and mobilizing support.
Right.
We've already seen how online activism has played a crucial role in advancing LGBTQ+ rights, and I expect that trend to continue. It allows for rapid dissemination of information, the formation of online communities, and the coordination of protests and demonstrations. It gives a voice to those who might otherwise be marginalized and silenced.
It's a powerful tool for amplifying marginalized voices, isn't it?
It is.
Now, Samantha, before we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to circle back to something we touched on earlier. The connection between Trump's stance on transgender rights and his broader attacks on woke culture and critical race theory.
Yeah.
How do you see these issues intersecting, and what are the implications of this framing?
Well, Derek, by linking these issues together, Trump is creating a narrative of a cultural war, pitting conservative values against what he perceives as radical leftist ideologies. This framing is effective because it taps into existing anxieties about social change and fuels a sense of grievance among his base. It allows him to present himself as the champion of the silent majority, fighting against an elite liberal agenda.
Right.
And by casting transgender rights as part of this larger cultural battle, he's able to demonize and delegitimize the movement, making it easier to justify his discriminatory policies.
It's a dangerous and divisive strategy, Samantha. One that could have long-lasting consequences for social cohesion and political discourse in America.
I agree, Derek. It's a strategy that thrives on polarization and demonization, and it undermines the possibility of reasoned debate and compromise. And unfortunately, it's a strategy that's gaining traction not just in the United States, but in other parts of the world as well.
So, Samantha, as we conclude this deep dive, what are your final thoughts for our listener who's been grappling with the complexities of this issue? What key takeaways should they carry with them?
Well, Derek, I think the most important takeaway is that the fight for transgender rights is far from over. It's a battle that's being waged on multiple fronts, from the courts to the streets to the digital sphere.
Right.
And it's a battle that requires our continued attention, engagement, and support.
Right.
It's crucial to stay informed, to challenge misinformation, and to amplify the voices of transgender individuals and their allies. We need to hold our elected officials accountable, demanding policies that protect and affirm the rights of all people, regardless of their gender identity or expression.
Samantha, those are powerful words to end on. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Donald Trump's proposed policies on transgender rights. We hope this conversation has provided you with valuable insights and a deeper understanding of the complexities of this issue. As always, we encourage you to continue exploring, learning, and engaging in this important conversation.
And Derek, I would just add that even though you and I firmly believe that there are only two genders, it's crucial to approach this topic with empathy, respect, and a willingness to listen to and understand different perspectives.
Well said, Samantha. That's the spirit of the deep dives. We delve into complex issues, explore multiple perspectives, and leave you with the information you need to form your own conclusions. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.